Will Florida State be able to keep their top recruits? And how will the coaching search impact recruiting?
You are Locked On Seminoles, your daily podcast on the Florida State Seminoles. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back into Locked On Seminoles. I am your host, Brian Smith, longtime college football writer and recruiting analyst. Thank you for making Locked On Seminoles your first listen each and every day. Today's show is brought to you by Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off of your first purchase. Recruiting. It is the lifeblood of every program, Florida State included. We're going to break down some of the players that Florida State has committed here in a minute, but on the back end is something that is also going to be very, very important on this show. And if you're going to watch one show all the way through this year, this is the one. Coaching changes. We're seeing a bunch of them, not just with FSU, really impacting recruiting positively, negatively, and some we're not even sure yet. That is going to be the second half of the show. But up front, I want to break down a few key guys that the Noles just cannot lose in this class and how the coaching changes may have already caused some problems with that, but possibly could be alleviated based on who Norvell gets. So let's break it down right off the bat. Top two players, in my opinion, in this recruiting class are as follows. Kevin Wynn out of Greene County High School in Georgia. It's a small school, but he is a big man making big plays. The other one is Solomon Thomas, another big man, 300-plus pound offensive lineman out of Raines High School in Jacksonville, Florida. He is a monster, and seeing those two go at it one-on-one at a Florida State practice would be must-watch entertainment. That would be tremendous. It's based really on the history of Florida State. When they've had their best teams, they've been dominant in the trenches. They've never had a problem getting skill guys. I mean, state of Florida, Georgia, Alabama, they skill guys for days. But they're really good big men in the South, too. The teams that get them, because there's not nearly as many, are the teams that hoist trophies. Bottom line, Florida State has two players that I think at their positions are as good as anybody in the country, and I think both have National Football League talent. So here's the breakdown. I have heard forever that Kevin Wynn, while committed to the Noles and has been for a long time, is a guy that could end up flipping to somebody else. Southern Cal, Georgia, whatever. I haven't heard anything recently. Again, he's at a very small school, Greensboro, Georgia, wherever that is. And it's a 1A school, so not as many people go out to see him play, but his high school film is utterly incredible. What he does, even against the double team, making plays in the backfield, I don't care what level one is playing at, ridiculous. So considering Florida State has two senior starters up front at the defensive tackle spots, Jackson and Farmer, they're probably going to be gone after this year. And quite honestly, you can never have enough defensive linemen. That's something Bobby Bowden used to discuss constantly when he was asked about recruiting, whether on air, off air, whatever. That is a prominent point. So you must find ways to get defensive tackles. And you don't want to lose them to your rival. I would imagine Georgia, just by proximity, would be the most likely, and it's an in-state kid, if you're going to lose it. This is the kind of player that anybody can utilize, even if you have a mediocre D-line coach, and obviously Odell is not. You would be able to plug him in, and he'd get some reps next year. Long-term, playing him next to Sampson, Big KJ, White, the kid they just signed this year who's redshirting, they're in the right direction at D-tackle. D-end I'm more concerned about. But at D-tackle, they're in the right direction. They do have the twins they just signed or got committed recently at end, but you can't lose guys like this. So let's talk about Solomon Thomas for a second. Haven't heard anything new in the last 24 hours, but I do know that LSU expects to host him. I know that program, we're going to discuss them vehemently here in about 15 minutes, but that program has always done well and always featured offensive and defensive linemen. No different right now under Brian Kelly, but they are a little light. They've got two offensive tackles that are probably going to head to the draft. They're just so on the interior. Solomon's going to play early about any school he goes to, but not many elite name brands like LSU have the circumstance they do. It's probably appealing. UF, Miami, they're not giving up either. He was just at UF. I would be surprised if he's a kid that it didn't come down to a signing day decision. I don't like where Florida State sits right now, and I don't think many others in the recruiting industry do either. But much like Kevin Wynn, you cannot lose an elite NFL, not plug and play, because lineman, it's a little different, but play as early as possible offensive lineman like Solomon. He could play tackle or guard, but for the record, Solomon has told me face-to-face that he prefers playing inside where the guys bench over 400 pounds. He wants to be in there grunting with the big guys, and that's cool by me. You need those guys too. So great offensive lines are built from the inside out. So there's nothing wrong with that. The question I have is, can Florida State get Solomon Thomas back on campus? If he's going to LSU this weekend, and I mean, I get it. I mean, Charleston Southern's not the most exciting revelation, but whatever. If he goes to LSU this weekend, does he come back to Tallahassee for the game against the Florida Gators? If he doesn't come to that game, and I've said this a million times, follow the visits. It's not a good sign. Same thing with Wynn, to be honest with you. If he's not there for the Gators game, unless they've got playoff game, I don't know if his team's still in the playoff or whatever, but unless he's got a game, I would be very disappointed that Florida State couldn't get him back on campus. That's a really important recruit. So those are the two main guys that I want to talk about. But there are other players that I would really be surprised. I've heard Gregory Zay Thomas is going to stick with the class. I think that's really important. Another guy that is really, really good that I've had actually on the show is Mario Nash Jr. Great kid, by the way. Big one, but a great guy. Future offensive tackle. I think his commitment is fairly obvious. If you go look at his social media, that it's somewhat, shall we say, up in the air. And I don't blame him. He lost his offensive line coach. Alex Atkins is no longer a part of the Florida State Seminoles football family. So relationships matter more than the name on the logo that's on the polo of the shirt that the coach wears when he walks into a high school to scout a kid. It's just the way it is. I know diehards never want to hear that, but that's how it works. Kids pick coaches, not schools. That is not changing. I always get comments and questions about that in the YouTube page. It's not changing. You can like it or dislike it, will not change. So Florida State, I'm going to get to it here in a second, has to make some adjustments with what Norvell's doing to make this, shall we say, go away and make them feel more comfortable. Can it be done? Yes, but we'll get to that in a second. Also concerned about Peyton Joseph. He's another offensive line recruit. And to be honest, he's another power guy. Florida State needs to be able to run the ball better inside. You had him and Solomon Thomas coming up the ranks. That'd be pretty good. And then finally, if you're looking at the class, Daniel Pierre-Louis is one of the most underrated guys in Florida State's class and nationally as an offensive lineman. A friend of mine went and scouted him recently. He's like, he's better than the kid that is committed to USC, the big-time linebacker. He said Daniel Pierre-Louis is the better player. He's a great athlete. He just doesn't play at a school in Seminole Ridge down in South Florida. That's a prominent program. He's looking at Florida real hard. There's a good chance he ends up flipping to the Gators. These are very difficult things to handle. As far as the rest of the class, Ethan Pritchard, Max Redmond, I don't think they're going to flip. They just got the Desir twins, both of them at Norland High School. The defensive ends are both really good. I have not heard anything on Chase Lofton, good, bad, or indifferent of late, and I highly doubt Byron Lewis flips, but we'll see. Am I missing anybody? That's it. So Florida State just got a commitment from a kicker. They flipped from USF, by the way. I don't know anything about him. I believe his name is Rouse, but or it's Roos. I'm not sure how you pronounce it. But Florida State still needs to build this class, and to do it, you can't lose your key guys. So we'll be breaking that down. But to help you understand how important recruiting is and how it's balanced with coaching, keep in mind, December 4th is signing day. It has been moved up 2 weeks, so there's no end of the season. There's a little gap where you can do all these in-home visits and stuff. That stuff's done, which I find weird. There's always been a lot of in-home visits, and it's honestly where Bobby Bowden made his money. He was the best at in-home visits, and it's how he won a lot of battles. I don't know how well Norvell did it, but he's not a great recruiter, so in some ways it's probably an advantage to Florida State because I know guys like Cristobal is elite with in-home visits. Marcus Freeman at Notre Dame is great at it. There's certain guys that were up the board that do a much better job. So that probably won't hurt the Noles as much. But with signing day being so close, the problem is, again, Alex Atkins is gone, Dugans is gone, Adam Fuller is gone. They're not going to be able to have all of the following in place: coach, replaced, and have a relationship before signing day. It's not. So what can Florida State do? We're going to talk a little bit about that and how other schools are also battling some of this with being on the hot seat down there at Billy Napier in Gainesville. They got some problems. Brian Kelly, LSU. Mario Cristobal even has some issues with some defensive players, in my opinion, because they got to be looking at their Florida or at the Miami defense, like what's going on, because they're struggling. There are a lot of different things that go into recruiting that is combined with the coaching staffs across the country. That is next here at Locked On Seminoles. Florida State fans, listen up. You need to download the Roy app. All you have to do is get on your phone and check it out. It's easy. You've heard us talk about it before, and Roy this season has helped all kinds of different players get money at Florida State. Each week after a game, I put in the information and talk about the player that I think had the best game, and we throw them some money. So they are revolutionizing the NIL industry. Roy allows you, the fan, to have a say in who gets the NIL money. It's your decision. So here's what you absolutely have to love about Roy. You get your money back if that player transfers. That's really cool. Roy is keeping us clean or keeping our team intact, and it's actually good for the team long-term as well, having a true roster. So remember, when you can look at a player like, I used Nicholson for the last game, or somebody like Tofili, when they get support from guys like you, it's really, really important because they get some appreciation for what they've done for Florida State University. Now let's talk about the opportunity, looking at things from a spotlight a few years ago. Remember when Jordan Travis made that incredible pass on a fourth down? That's a reason Florida State was able to beat Miami. If Roy would have been around then, that would have been an opportunity for Florida State fans to show their appreciation. Obviously, the Noles didn't play this past week, but the next time something like that happens, remember the Roy app. Here's an opportunity for you to show your support. So download the Roy app and join Roy today. Use promo code LOCKEDON. Every athlete from every team is in there. No purchases necessary. Void where prohibited. Go to joinroy.com for full terms. Roy, support the players and change the game. Today's show is also brought to you by Gametime. If you have not downloaded the Gametime app, you should. It's a pretty cool app, and it makes things really easy for a guy like me who's not the most patient to find tickets to concerts, football games, basketball, or anything else. And as an example, growing up, I loved going to live basketball games. There's nothing like being in the crowd and being in the middle of an excitement when there's a slam dunk. It's really cool. It doesn't matter if it's high school, college, or the NBA. It's a lot of fun. So make sure you go to a live basketball game sometime soon, and Gametime is the place to do it. There's also an opportunity to take advantage of Gametime Picks. It's an app feature that filters out all the fluff so you can see the incredible deals on seats right there on the app. You don't have to do all the searching and waste your time. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Gametime Picks. Download the app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off. Download Gametime today. What time is it? Gametime. All right. Next up, we're going to be talking about a really good opportunity for people to learn about recruiting and how it really works in conjunction with the coaching carousel. Because Ward only knows it is not an easy thing to do. You try to get rid of a coach, but you want to keep all the recruits. The timing is terrible, just the way it works. You're at the end of the cycle for your season. You're at the end of the cycle for your recruiting class, because, again, December 4th is when recruiting happens. But yet, at the end of the season is when coaches are let go. Players pick coaches. You've heard me say it a million times. I'm saying it again and again and again. I will never stop saying it. They do not pick schools. They pick coaches. So how is Norvell going to muster keeping some of the guys that are important? Solomon Thomas, Kevin Wynn, Byron Lewis, whoever it is that you want to look at, there's some way, shape, or form somebody impacted, because you got rid of both coordinators. So it impacts every recruit. And also with the offensive lineman, that was also Alex Atkins' responsibility as well. Well, it's number one, you got to build better relationships long-term yourself. I think Norvell is a very average head coach as a recruiter, based on all the intel that I have personally received. He's a nice guy, etc., but he's not winning battles like he should with the Florida State moniker to go along with it. That logo carries a lot of weight. The brand, Florida State's brand, they've gotten some really, really good players. But at the same time, those guys are going to be loyal to coaches first, as I noted. He's going to have to find a way over the next 2 weeks to make up a lot of ground, to keep a Kevin Wynn, to keep a Solomon Thomas, literally himself. Because again, you're not going to get all of the following accomplished. It's not mathematically possible. Sign a new coach, have a relationship built, because it takes months and months, if not a year or more, to do it. It's 2 weeks. So he's going to have to do it. And the other guys on the staff that he plans to keep, and I'm guessing there could be more staff changes. It's possible. I have no idea. But anybody that's truly bought into Florida State, they're going to have to make up ground and cross-recruit. It's just about effort. You're making a lot of money. All of them are making 7 figures. Collectively, the Florida State staff has to make up ground. It is a very, shall we say, unenviable task, considering what Florida State's under right now with the scrutiny. I mean, you are 1 of 9. There's no way around that. So the Noles have to find a way to get out there and make it happen in the recruiting trail, and it's just effort. They got to show that they're going to do the right things personally. The additional part, and I know this gets very touchy with laws, but if Norvell, hypothetically speaking, again, I don't know this, if he knows, let's just use an example, that he's hiring a certain offensive coordinator, you have to tell the coach on the staff, some of the other guys say they don't get caught off guard, but the next thing is you tell recruits, hey, just so you know, we can't announce this because there's background checks, blah, blah, blah. It won't be publicly announced until after National Signing Day, but your position coach will be in fill in the blank. This is something that's common. It gets leaked a lot. Sometimes when a head coach takes another job before signing day, there's a guy that, like, I know there's been big time recruits that got phone calls from coaches that they knew well. They say, hey, just so you know, it's not public yet, but I'm switching from job A to job B. I'd love for you to come with me. It happens all the time. It's the same thing, but just this time with the coordinator, you have nothing to lose by it because a kid would rather know, hey, this coordinator is coming than not. That's something Florida State has to do. Now with that, I want to use some examples here about contracts, guys getting fired and all that really impacts a lot of different places. And I'm going to use Florida Napier because they're a pretty hot team right now on the recruiting trail. It's kind of a weird deal. It's very unusual what's going on there. But they took the money they were considering using on Napier, from what I'm told, and they're going to dump it on recruits / probably the portal, probably more portal, but that season's not open yet. Because Napier has been retained and he is a pretty popular player with the current roster, they're now back in with Jamie French. They're recruiting Solomon Thomas. They obviously just had the big win over LSU, who's failing miserably, but they still beat LSU. They got DJ Lagway. They got some momentum. But they still have guys that might leave the class too. It's one of the most bizarre things I've ever seen because their offense is just so-so, and there's a lot of inconsistencies with that team, being kind. And there's concern about coaches being let go, not just after this year, but just because you're giving Billy some kind of fake, shall we say, vote of confidence publicly. Is he really off the hot seat? Of course he's not. People aren't stupid, but he's going to be back next year. That at least gives you a chance. And I know the first thing people are going to say is he's keeping his job because of DJ Lagway. And you're right, because he's a very special talent. But even though Florida might gain a few kids, remember, there's a transfer portal, so they don't worry about going somewhere they want to go as much as they used to because they don't have to sit out a year. A lot of the kids they might sign this December, if Florida State fails next year, Norvell is going to get fired. If Florida fails next year, Napier is going to get fired too. This is not a newsflash. So it is really weird that they're hitting it right now in Gainesville. They've got some recruiting momentum, but it's not lock, stock, and barrel. There are a couple kids, Nation Montgomery, et cetera, that may not end up in their class that could end up being really good players in college football that I know about. And it's really hard to say how many of those guys will end up signing and if they can add anybody. Florida definitely needs to add more. Their class is not very good by Florida standards. They could lose Ben Hanks, and they could even lose Tayshawn Gelsey, a kid out of the greater Jacksonville area. It's a big-bodied receiver. Florida State would love to flip him. There's a chance they do. And that just shows, again, it's wild. Like, Florida State lost their receiver coach and their coordinator, and Tayshaun is looking at the Noles. I don't know how that works. Because, again, I will tell you, every single day of the week, recruits pick coaches, not schools. How do you pick coach if he's not hired? So Florida State and their entire staff have a unique job. And if they don't have at least a receiver coach that they can tell Gelsey or somebody else even that they're recruiting, hey, this is going to be your guy, it's going to be hard to land any receiver. It just is. So it's wild to me that he's even looking at the Noles. But that's an example. When I come back, I'm going to give you a further discussion about quarterback recruiting. We're going to use a Florida State example because Carter Smith is definitely in that mix. There's also a situation with Miami, and there's a little bit of information about Georgia and some other schools just want to throw in. That is next here on Locked On Seminoles. I love a great deal as much as the next guy, but I'm not going to just go out of my way and waste a bunch of time to save a few bucks. It's not my style. I'm not the most patient guy. It has to be pretty darn easy. No hoops, no BS. So when Mint Mobile said it was easy to get wireless for $15 a month, that caught my attention. Turns out it really is that easy to get wireless for $15 a month. The best part of it is the time that you're not going to spend getting it from Mint Mobile. Unfortunately, it'll take you a little longer to break up with your current provider because they always try to send you through a bunch of hoops. Don't worry, Mint Mobile is not going to do that to you, though. To get started, just go to mintmobile.com/lockedoncollege. They'll see that right now you can get 3-month plan for only $15 a month. That's pretty darn good. That includes the unlimited plan. All plans come with high-speed data, unlimited talk and text delivered on the nation's largest 5G network. You can use your own phone with any Mint Mobile plan and bring your phone number along with all of your existing contacts. Find out how easy it is to switch from Mint Mobile and get 3 months of premium wireless service for $15 a month. To get this new customer offer, it's got to be a new 3-month premium wireless plan for $15 a month. Just go to mintmobile.com and use code /LockedOnCollege. That's mintmobile.com/LockedOnCollege. Cut your wireless bill to $15 a month at mintmobile.com/LockedOnCollege. $45 upfront payment is required. New customers on a first 3-month plan only. Speed slower than 40 gigabytes on unlimited plan. Additional taxes, fees, and restrictions apply. See Mint Mobile for details. If Florida State was the only school that had issues with coaching changes, or at least that's what you think, you'd be wrong. Even schools that have a really good season, one in particular I want to talk about next, Miami, might have an issue, even though they're winning, and I think they're going to make the playoff quite possibly. But it's not because they're going to necessarily lose a coach. It's just the unknown. Like, why is Miami 50th? I got a stat over it. Some of their stats are bizarre. With all the talent Miami has, what they bought out of the portal, with all that NIL money, Miami's defense is still 57th in scoring defense and still 50th against the pass. How is that possible? They put a bunch of money into their coaching staff too. At some point, I'm guaranteeing it's already happened, but just be nice. At some point, negative recruiting is going to catch up with them with that because players are going to hear about coaches probably being let go and again, it's probably both. Hey, why would you go there? They're not getting coached up. Coaching concerns are a problem, even when it's not definitive that a coach is leaving. Sometimes it's worse. Recruiting is impacted because kids, and especially their parents, from years and years of experience of doing this, want to know definitively that a coach is going to be there. Now, I've said for years, show me a coach that's always honest in recruiting, meaning like he's going to be at a school, and I will show you a coach that's soon to be on the unemployment line. Unfortunately, it's a dog-eat-dog business. Honesty gets you fired. There is no coach that's likely to be anywhere for more than about 3 years. That's just the way it is. You can look up the averages. It's insane. There are a lot of guys that are 1-2 years. If you look at their resume for 15, they've been at 7 schools. Maybe a stop in the NFL mixed in with that. It's a very difficult business. These guys don't always get along with each other, and the contracts at some other school just might be better. If you're going to go make $300K more to do the same job, chances are you're leaving that job. Money talks. So could Miami lose recruits? And they've got a really good class? Absolutely. There are people trying to poach some of their prospects. It'll be random, but they're going to have to fight off NIL, development. Will coaches be leaving? Hey, they're not doing that well. What's the deal? Why would you want to go there? That's the mild end of it. But coaching is impacted there because, again, they spend all this money on these players and they're not getting it done on defense. Teams are going to hammer them. So you can imagine what's happening in Florida State. And it's why they already made moves. To be honest, that's true. I mean, Florida State has failed on defense too often this year as just the comparison to Miami. But at the same time, they've already made moves. Miami has not. And I actually thought they had a really good coordinator and some really good assistants, but the mesh hasn't been good. I guarantee they're getting hammered negatively. The other school, and this one's hilarious to me, there's never an excuse for LSU to struggle on defense, offense, special teams, and anything. Per capita, Louisiana is as good as it gets, especially for defensive linemen, historically speaking. It's insane. And they have still failed under Brian Kelly. What is it? They got a 3-game losing streak? The main reason that he's not going to get fired this year is he's kind of like Norvell. His contract is enormous. The buyout is not a fun time. In the state of Louisiana, and remember, LSU is a state school, so the state funding is part of his buyout. That state is hurting. They're not in a good financial spot. So even if a booster wants to pay it, it's just a bad look politically. He ain't going anywhere. But one of the other reasons, even if it was a little less, Bryce Underwood is committed. Carter Smith, the kid I've talked about a few times on this show that Florida State's trying to get, it's probably a little dicey, but there aren't many schools left, and he's a top quarterback down at Bishop Verot in Fort Myers. He's got to be looking at the same thing. But Underwood's already committed to LSU and has been for a long time. The NIL deal, I don't know if many of you have heard about this, that Michigan offered him is over $10 million. And he's allegedly going to still stick with LSU. One of the reasons, Coach Sloan, the quarterback coach, passing game guy for LSU, is somebody he's got a really good relationship with. A lot of LSU fans want him gone, but they want Underwood. He's a potential generational talent at quarterback. Very awkward. Carter Smith's really good, but I don't think he's Bryce Underwood. Would Kelly, if they had like a $15 million buyout, would he be the guy that's still there with Underwood? It's possible. That's how important recruiting is. And I can tell you flat out, yes, these discussion points come up when administrators and athletic directors, et cetera, have communication about keeping coaches, extending contracts, firing coaches. Elite recruits are important. Sloan's under fire from the LSU fans because their offense stunk against Alabama. I mean, they were horrible. And then they weren't much better against Florida. I mean, no offense to Florida, but their defense isn't what Alabama's is. And they still stunk. They're probably going to keep their jobs in Baton Rouge because of the money, but because of Bryce Underwood. It's just a reminder that elite coaches, they get more leeway. Okay, I'll grant you that. But even a bad coach can get leeway if there's an elite recruit attached to his name. Just want to say it one more time. Recruits pick coaches, not schools. That's just the nature of the business. It's not going to change. With that, here's a parting note. That should be the case at Florida State anyway, and it's not right now. Florida State needs to add at minimum 3 guys to this coaching staff that wasn't on the 24 staff that aren't good recruiters. They are elite recruiters. They got 3 guys already out the door. Again, there could be more. All 3 of the hires have to be elite. There are no exceptions to that. You cannot be in this position and be Florida State. It's one of the easiest jobs in the country to get players because of proximity. You're within a 5-hour radius, about everything you could ever want. Atlanta, Orlando, Tampa. It's ridiculous how much talent is in North Florida and South Georgia. And don't forget about the state of Alabama. You can pick off a few there. Just those 3 states, you can have a top 5 class every year. Florida State is failing at it, and they're not getting the coaches that are getting the Bryce Underwoods. That is important. And I'll give them credit, just to be nice. They did get rid of coaches that were causing some of the problem, and maybe Miami has to do something like that after this season. Who knows how that'll finish up. Thank you once again for making Locked On Seminoles your first listen each and every day. If you have not already, please subscribe, like this podcast, hit that notification bell so we know when the next show comes up. And you can find me on X at FBScout_Florida. Go check out my guys, Kenton and Alex over at Locked On ACC next. I will see you again on Wednesday.